You're about to listen in on a classroom where the lecture focuses on the first of the analytic techniques called root cause analysis. This is the most frequently used of all the techniques, and so we began there because it was most familiar to the students. If you've not used this technique before, you will see that it's comprised of two simple questions, why and why here, and a basic visualization technique based on a bubble diagram, where each idea is put in a circle and connected by a line to the previous idea that generated it. This basic technique is the one you'll find probably used most often in your own work. Let's listen in. We're going to go through now our first technique. Before lunch, this is what we're going to do, all right? We're going to start with the technique most familiar to everyone and build from there. Our first problem analysis or issue analysis technique we're going to learn was taught in the National Coalition Academy. You'll see why later, why it was selected, and it only uses two questions. Do you remember this? We talked about that issue analysis is a question path married to a visualization process. In this case, our question path is short and simple. Why and why here? You're probably all very familiar with this one. We're going to do it very quickly. The results are captured in a bubble chart. Every time we learn an issue analysis technique, we're going to do it as a whole group first. The issue we're going to explore as a whole group is childhood nutrition. A big concern at the moment in many communities is a rising rate of obesity, right? And the nutrition level of young people, both from a food security point of view, that kids have enough to eat, and from a nutrition point of view, that they've got the right things to eat. In the bubble diagram charting process, you take and put the issue in the middle, usually in a circle, right? How many of you have done this before? Good. We'll move through this one quickly. Okay, so our issue is nutrition. We want to assure good nutrition for young people, and at the moment, young people are not eating nutritious food. And so we use these two questions. We ask why and why here. Why are young people likely not eating nutritious food? This is brainstorming. Any rule?
Don't like it.
They don't like it. They think it doesn't taste good. Does not taste good. What else? Access. The term food desert has become a popular term to denote places within convenience in which there are not healthy foods to choose from. Other ideas of why kids are not eating healthy.
Others are eating poverty.
Poverty. It may be a food security issue, right? And I heard another idea I missed.
They want to eat what others.
Yeah.
Also, like to prep that, like not knowing how to necessarily prep or not having the time. So.
Yes, there's preparation involved, right? Fresh food often requires preparation. Good. Why else might young people not be eating?
Lack of education.
Yes. There may be knowledge, right? Don't know. Marketing. Yes. Name a slogan for apples. Name a slogan for cereal. Right? Everyone has, everybody remembers everybody from Tony the Tiger, right, to Snap, Crackle, Pop on Rice Krispies, right? Whatever it is, right? Okay, so we know we have a great deal of advertising of what can often be less nutritious options, right? Using this issue analysis technique, basically you put your issue in the middle and you ask people to brainstorm around, right? That is pretty straightforward. Next, you take any one of these, right, such as access, would be one, right? Or advertising, but let's take access. Why here? Why in your community? Now, we're all from different communities, so bear with here. We'll do this as a thought exercise. But put yourself back home in your own community. Why do some young people not have access to healthy, talk about access to healthy food in your community at home? Why might that be? Yes?
Poor family management.
Family management issues. And I heard unemployment. Okay.
Transportation in our community.
Transportation. I'm sorry?
Only one store.
Well, only one store? Okay. Yes. Okay. Now, this is going to play out differently in different communities, is it not? Right? If you think of a highly rural community, distance may be an issue, right? Or at least it may be a lot of different places far away and small places where I can get healthy food. If you're in an urban environment, right, it may be just creating this, literally getting a grocer that can work in the space you've got. There can be a lot of constraints as to why it's happening. It will be different by community. The point here is to get specific to your community. And one of the challenges of this technique is often people struggle to do so. right? So for example, we may note, you have up here unemployment, right? Which might be more related to the poverty issue, right? And so that can be a little difficult, but that's the goal, is to ask why, and then for each why, we ask why here. Very straightforward. Okay, it's a technique taught in the academy. It's the one you're most familiar with. So I want you to do it fairly quickly so that everyone in the room's done it at least once. And then we're going to talk about what it's good at and not good at, so we can be wiser about when we choose to use this technique. I need your attention just for a moment. If we could come back together, please, just for a moment. Hopefully you've done an initial round of why, and for some of your whys, you did why here. For those of you familiar with this technique, it probably moved fairly quickly for you. This looks fairly straightforward. We only asked 2 questions, why and why here, and we charted it in a bubble chart, right? So that the ideas remained connected of what was related to what. And we just did that by drawing a circle and connecting with a line. That sounds fairly easy and straightforward. What could possibly go wrong, right? Tons. So let's talk about effective facilitation of this particular technique. If you've done in the community what's gone well and not done well, and let's talk about what it's good for and not good for, all right? Because it's fairly simple, right? All right? So let's talk about some basic tips up front, and then I'm going to ask you about your experience with it. You can see that one piece of chart paper is not much room. And if you actually have a team of people calling out ideas and putting them to, you're going to need a lot more space to work with, right? So sticky walls, these kinds of things are your friend. Number 2 is make sure that you get multiple people who record the ideas, right? So that you capture the ideas, as people said. Number 3, if you're working in a large group setting, make sure that the idea someone offers is actually that they agree you wrote it down. We often translate what people say. We abbreviate it to make it fit on the paper, and we can sometimes do harm to what they think was their core idea. They should see their stuff on the wall. So check back with them. Did I get it right? I needed to shorten it a tad bit to fit, but does this capture your key idea? So make sure people recognize their ideas are going to the wall. That usually means, number 4, you need more than one word. Or people lose track of what was intended there, right? Because we had several ideas here, right, where we're not sure, if I went back to my single word, what we were referring to. What is difficult or good about what you did just now? What was your feedback? Was it easy? Was it difficult? Or if you've done this in the community, what's been good or bad? Yes?
The difficult thing is to keep them from thinking in just their community initially. So when we're talking about like why is a problem, no, we're talking like on a global scale.
Yes.
Why would this be an issue? And I
Yes.
have to do that on a regular basis. Why on a global issue?
Yeah.
Why do we have underage drinking as a problem in the whole United States?
Right. Why is this a problem? Yes. Helping people recognize the difference between cause and conditions. These are 2 words we use a lot. Let's be clear about what we mean. Causes generally are also called risk factors, protective factors, developmental assets. Depending on the language or framework you're using in your community, these are the general things, right, that are known to make things more or less likely. They usually have a fair amount of prevention research and science behind them, whether it's heart disease or immunization, right, for why something is occurring. These often have the strongest connection to a research base. The next question is, why here? And this is designed to ask, in our community, what local conditions are creating this risk of availability or failing to protect or develop as we should? These are things particular to our community. Now, we probably have them in common with other communities. We're not all terminally unique. We can learn from each other, right? But they are clearly specific to your community in a recognizable way. Social norms and the notion of availability are of all of our communities. But how they play out are unique, and identifying those begin to give you the points of what must change in your community to produce the downstream result of lower risk and changed behavior. And if you aren't precise in that, what you end up with is 100% of the right solution to the wrong problem. Evidence-based great stuff that isn't tackling the local conditions in your community at all, right? It is that fit. It is the accuracy of the diagnosis where the precision comes to your passion. And to get an accurate diagnosis, it requires the point of view of all those roles around your table who see the lives of young people and of your community from a different point of view and with different data. Law enforcement bring a vital point of view as much as teachers and nurses and everyone else because they see a part but not all of the problem. And so if you want an accurate diagnosis, you need all of them. It takes a coalition to understand the problem as much as it takes a coalition to make a difference. But you're right, keeping people clear on the questions of we're at the level of why and not at the level of why here yet. And managing that so it doesn't shut people off from the creative brainstorming. Yep, can be difficult. Good. What else has been good or bad in your experience in using this technique? Anything? Or even just now? Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I got two of you. One at a time. Sorry.
Me? Okay. Just one of the challenges is that it's not like it's necessarily there's solutions out of it. You know, it's kind
Yes.
of, it can get so big. It's like, okay, now we've got this huge. It can be a little overwhelming.
It can be overwhelming, and this is true of many of your issue analysis techniques. Being honest about the complexity of the issue and its multiple causes can have people feeling overwhelmed. Now remember, one of our rules is think comprehensively even if you can't act comprehensively. Don't pretend the problem is simple, even though the points of action available to you may be few in number based on your resources, right? Or may have been selected for strategic reasons. We're going to start here. This is what the community can do. We'll build out. But we're not going to pretend that that's the solution or that that'll take care of it. Eventually, we're going to have to find partners who can start really moving this idea map forward. But you're right, it can feel very overwhelming to have too many ideas. And the other thing, too, is when you're brainstorming, especially issues of concern that are problems, when your problem issue is some behavior you don't want, right? It can also be a very negative diagnosis of the community. It can feel very unbalanced, right? And because you're not discussing solutions yet, this is not about brainstorming what we should do. This is about brainstorming why it is as it is. Very different, right? Of the techniques we're going to cover, we're not covering SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You're probably familiar with that idea, right? We're not covering force field analysis or power analysis. Why? Because those are not issue analysis. Those are situational analysis techniques. They help us discover what action should we take first. That's a different kind of thing. And so one of the things that can be frustrating for your group is, oh my gosh, this sounds terrible. That's a whole lot of terrible on the wall, right? And we haven't even gotten any solutions yet. Conversely, people can want to jump to solutions. They can want to start thinking now about the interventions. And they need to hold that at bay just long enough to get a complete diagnosis before they start prescribing medicine. The basic rules of brainstorming: more ideas are better than one, the more the better. No idea is a bad idea. Right now, the sillier the better. Just get it out, get it up, think creatively, right? And so those basic rules, more is better and don't censor now, can be hard for a group that has history with the issue. Your coalition has been around for a while very often, has been working on it for a while. Bringing fresh eyes is hard. And so I have to ask, who do you invite to participate in this process? Is this an opportunity for the episodic partnership with people as opposed to the every meeting partnership, right? Is this where you say, we're trying to get an accurate diagnosis. We're spending a month doing this. We're hosting 3 meetings. We need you for 2 hours. Here's why we need you. Not to be a member of my coalition. Coming doesn't mean you've signed up to doing everything. Coming means you know something about the community we need to know. And we're in brainstorming mode, and we need you to get it on the map for us. And just to elicit that, I alluded to the youth master planning process in Alexandria, Virginia. Hundreds of young people and parents went through and talked about conditions and why, and they generated an enormous amount of understanding they couldn't have gotten otherwise, and it was highly engaging for people to have a voice to describe what the issues are they care about, why they think they're happening, and yes, in that meeting they also asked about solutions, but they did so giving enough time to each to really get it. If you keep getting the same ideas, you might need to change the kids in the sandbox. Let's make the sandbox a little bigger. Let's get some fresh ideas. Here's the central purpose. The point of the root cause technique, the why here, is to not only unpack the complex issue, but you're trying to identify the specific local features that need to be changed to reduce a problem. All right? That's the purpose. Now, its strengths. If you have a lot of data, lots known about the local conditions. Great. If you don't have any, you end up with a lot of prejudice on the table and no check against it, right? No reality. Second, it works well on issues that have a lot of research or science behind them already. And so this is one of the reasons you can see it was selected by the National Coalition Academy as sort of the technique they emphasize. Because in substance abuse, we have a strong research base to talk about the why, right? A well-established set of risk factors if we're using that perspective. Right? So it takes advantage of those circumstances. When that's not true, you're in trouble. And lastly, it certainly has the easiest charting process of all the techniques. Fairly simple. Make sure your ideas, keep them connected with the line. If you lose the line, you lose the logic. You've got to keep the ideas connected so you know what's with what, right? But it's not that difficult. It doesn't require a certain degree of knowledge about the charting process. You can easily invoke someone in the room to help you chart the result because they can see how it's done. That's nice. All right, but problems, weaknesses. This kind of just tends to reinforce everybody's assumptions. Doesn't really challenge you a lot, right? It's an anything goes piece of paper. There's no form on the paper to force you to consider alternatives, right? And so it can really reinforce what people already know. It can also not be productive because the why here question turns out is pretty hard. What I often get to the question why here are more generic whys. People have a hard time getting in a mindset thinking, okay, I live in St. Louis, right? What is it that marijuana, right, specific to my community or my state? People really struggle with that, and they stay at the vague and the general. And while the question says, why here, it's often not an effective prompt to helping people identify why here. And lastly, this can tend to isolate issues from related concerns. It's very focused in on the presenting issue in the middle. Now you can see, and Laura mentioned this, wait a minute, when I get out to some local conditions, I could recognize they probably cause other problems, right? But generally the map is centered on the idea in a way that doesn't open up to connections. Depends. These can be some of its weaknesses, right? How many of you have done the root cause technique with your coalition or in your community at least once? Would you do it again? I mean, okay, but I mean, really, would you do it again?
Yeah.
Okay. When would you do it again? Now, you've done it. And this is going to get to the idea of coalition work, right? Sometimes we feel like we're going in circles, and then sometimes we realize, oh, it is a process. We're not going in circles. But how soon again would you want to do a root cause analysis if you've done one with your community or coalition? Yes?
We'll do it when we get our evaluation, our data back.
When you get a new round of data or evaluation that might help you improve your understanding, go back, wait a minute, should we change this picture? Is there something new? Good. Yes. Classic. When else? Yes?
When, especially with our youth, when a specific action plan is complete.
Yes, our action plan is complete. Where do you go back to refresh the well? How do we know what else then to do next?
We
Yes.
go back to the bubble chart, what's the next bubble?
Yes, what's the next bubble? Or, based on results, what additionally have we not done to move this bubble? Yes, good. Yes?
With emerging drug trends?
Yes, when you have new and emerging drug trends, wait a minute, what's happening here and why? Good. These are classic examples of when it's time. Coalitions that become familiar with the notion that that it's ready, aim, shoot. When they can get comfortable with the fact that you're supposed to aim, that the aim's worth a meeting. I love action, and shoot's worth a lot of actions, worth a lot of meetings, but aim is worth one. And they know when they need to stop and aim again, they become fairly comfortable with, oh, this will be worth a half hour, even at the committee level, right? And they can become far more strategic in their thinking. This is our most familiar technique, and so I hope it's an easy place to start.